Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range to talk about a brand new reintroduced product, but it still is its own new product, and that is the Daniel Defense H9. But in my hands, I have an original Hudson H9, and the handgun came about several years ago. It was a private venture that ran into some financial problems, and the gun kind of went by the wayside. Several years ago, Daniel Defense purchased the rights to the handgun, but we've kind of been waiting in limbo with no real news whether or not Daniel Defense was going to bring it to market. In SHOT Show 2024, Daniel Defense announced the new H9. We have one out here at the range this afternoon, but we're going to start off today's video shooting the original H9, which you see here. The original handgun is an all-metal striker-fired handgun, but it had some interesting design features that made it interesting to folks like myself. So it has a low bore axis, very low bore axis, which sets the bore much lower in the shooter's hand to mitigate recoil. Then you'll notice this large dust cover down here. The recoil assembly has also been moved down as far as they can go, and that's so when the slide comes to the rear and it brings that spring and recoil rod to the rear and it slams home, stops, and goes back forward, that recoil impulse down here will also be moved to a lower position within the shooter's hand, and again, in an effort to mitigate recoil. Now, as I mentioned, it's all metal handgun, and it is a double stack 9mm. So a lot of the qualities have been maintained in the new Daniel Defense gun, but a lot of changes, a lot of changes have also been implemented. The original guns, some people reported broken parts, some people reported reliability issues. Mine's always been a really solid performer, but I don't shoot it much for fear of actually breaking something and not being able to repair it. But in today's video, we're going to start off shooting the original H9, then we're going to jump into the new Daniel Defense H9 and talk about the handgun more completely. All right, let's start off by doing a little bit of shooting with this guy. I've always really liked these guns, how they feel. It has the ergonomics of a 1911. The grip looks very 1911-ish, so that is very familiar to me. The segmented trigger is meant to give you the feel of a 1911 style trigger, to give you that type of a break so you don't have a hinging trigger. So overall, the ergonomics and stuff on the gun were very, very promising. Yeah, extremely smooth shooting handguns, very flat shooting handguns. Let's take a look at the new H9. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. So this is the new Daniel Defense H9. They've made a number of changes. We'll get into those changes in a little bit more depth here a little later in the video. But if you take a look at it outwardly, it looks very similar to the original handgun, but it also has some very different features. If you take a look at the contour of the trigger guard, it's quite different. Also, you'll notice the dust cover has been moved up a wee bit. They have shortened the grip, so it's more of a Glock 19 sized handgun, where the original H9 was very much a full-sized handgun. Still maintain that 1911 style profile, double stack 9mm magazine, and striker fired. But now we also have the addition of optics cut on top of the slide, so you can basically put whatever red dot sight you want on there. When you pick up the handgun, there'll be a little QR code for you to scan, and then you can order the red dot sight mounting plate that you want to use with your handgun. All right, with all that being said, the sights are a little bit different. The sights on this handgun will be compatible with SIG compact style sights, so you will be able to put different sights on it. The sights that are currently on here are quite different from the original H9. Now, the original H9 had its own magazine, which I have it here. And this is the full-size magazine. And this will just kind of demonstrate the difference in grip length between the original handgun and the new Daniel Defense. Clearly, they're going after the concealed carry market. Now, you do have ambi controls on the handgun, so you have a slide stop, slide release on both sides, something that's carried over from the original. And those 1911 ergonomics are just really, really solid. As you can see, even though it's a compact sized handgun, my pinky finger, and I have large hands, are comfortably on the gun, and really nice aggressive texturing on the front strap, but not so much that it cuts into your hand like sandpaper. They're just horizontal lines, but they're aggressive, and we have good texturing back here as well. There's no grip safety. It may look like there's one here, but that's not what that is. There's no grip safety on the handgun. All right, so let's do a little bit of shooting with this using the original Hudson 9's magazine. This is 127, or I'm sorry, 140, no, yeah, 124 grain Federal 9mm ball ammo. In the next magazine, we have some 115 grain ball. All right. So if you have original magazines, they're going to work just fine in the handgun. Here's the new 15-round compact magazine that goes with the current generation of H9. And again, we have slide stop, slide releases on both sides of the gun. This is the 115 grain stuff. Such a great shooting gun. Now, the controls on the gun are very good to get at. We don't have an ambi mag release, but you can reverse the mag so you can set it up for left-handed use. We do have those slide controls on both sides. Nice beefy extractor there. We have slide serrations front and rear for those of you that like to do press checks or operate your gun from the front. You have that option with this handgun. Again, we have an aluminum lower, steel upper, so it's an all-metal constructed handgun. Just feels really, really good in my hands. Just a perfect size. We'll get some weights and trigger pull information on this gun for you guys as well. But overall, I really like the fact that now I can put a red dot sight on it. I like the fact that they've shortened the gun just a little bit, making it more concealed carry friendly. And there are holster options out there available for it. I have an appendix carry holster for this one right now, and we'll show that in today's video as well. We have a couple of magazines loaded up with some Remington 115 grain ball. And yeah, I just like the way this gun feels. The trigger is really, really nice. No, I have another magazine in here somewhere. There it is. Yeah. It's just an extremely smooth shooting little gun. Take a look at that trigger. So you can see the kind of reverse Glock dingus, the inertial safety right there. You bring that up, and then the trigger will move straight rearward, like a 1911. Break, reset is right there. Very short reset, that's full release. So there's break, and there's reset. I mean, very, very, you can hear it and you can feel it. The feedback to the trigger on the reset is a little bit muted. I can definitely feel it there, but I can also hear it. So it has very much a 1911 style trigger in terms of its feel. It has a nice flat face on it, and that moving straight rearward like a 1911 really gives it that, that feel. Really nice trigger on it. So let's take a closer look at the two handguns side by side, the original and the new DD handgun. Now, I'm going to go over some of the things that I see as differences. I don't have the drawings. I don't know what all the minutia is with regards to all the changes that were made, but I'm going to go over what I can actually see between the two different versions of the handgun that I have here. So if you start off with the handgun, let's start off back here. So first of all, as we've already pointed out, the new handgun has a shorter grip than the original, both 1911 style, but this one obviously is a little bit longer. You'll notice that the serrations, this is the original. It has like a checker pattern, like 30 lines per inch type, which is a little bit more aggressive in terms of how it interacts with your hands. And here you can see the horizontal, deeply cut horizontal serrations on the new handgun. And on the front of the grip, you'll see that there are differences as well, like 30 lines per inch or so right here, and those really deep horizontal lines. Now the grips appear to be very similar, although the screw holes look like they're probably in different places just because of the shorter grip length. Now one thing that Jason noticed that I didn't notice because I have very non-meaty hands, I have very bony hands, he noticed that there's a slight difference back here on the grip frame where this, what looks like a grip safety, interfaces with the actual grip frame. On the original handgun, these edges are more rounded. Jason noticed when he got a nice deep grip on this handgun and fired it that it would start to cut into the meaty portion of his hand just a little bit. And it's just that right edge right there that's making that difference for him. So for me, I don't notice anything. He did notice that, and I got some pictures of how that was interacting with his hand. Coming up here, you're going to notice there's a little pin, right? Part of the trigger mechanism, presumably. That pin's absent from the new handgun. That tells me there are significant changes to the gun, right? Very different changes. So parts that you might need for the old gun probably won't necessarily come from the new production Daniel Defense guns. There's going to be significant differences between the two models. If you take a look at the serrations, these appear to be a little bit more broad than the original serrations. Coming up here, you can see the original sights. Not sure what format these are in terms of what dovetail size they use. If you take a look, and I've confirmed this with Daniel Defense, if you take a look at the sights on this handgun, has a nice deep U-notch in it, deep serrations on it like the original, but it looks like a SIG, small format style cut to it for the dovetails, so you can actually use P365 type sights on this if you want to swap out the sights on it. Another thing that jumps right out at you is there's a slightly different profile to the slide stop slide release, but more notably to the extractor. So if you take a look at the original extractor, it looks very Glockish in its design. If you take a look at the new handgun, it's a much larger, beefier extractor on the new gun. Of course, then we have the slide cuts for the red dot sights on the new pistol, which were absent from this handgun, but when this was manufactured, obviously red dot sights hadn't really quite come of age yet and weren't quite as popular as they are today in 2024. Taking a look at the trigger is very similar, but look at the trigger guard. So this is a much smaller trigger guard on the original. Over here, they've brought the bottom of the trigger guard down, opened up that hole, so a gloved hand is going to work better with the new handgun versus the original. Moving forward, the dust covers are quite different. So you'll notice this is more conventional on the new handgun. We have a roll pin back here. It's more conventional. When we take them apart, you'll see the differences. So they've shortened that dust cover, and a lot of people complained about putting a light on the original, because when you would put a light on here, it would stick way down below the handgun, and people didn't like that. So by bringing that dust cover up a bit, putting 1913 rails on there, they've remedied that concern that some folks had with the original design. Taking a look at the other side of the guns, and I will show you that these guns are empty. Taking a look at the other side, very different takedown methods. This has a lever that you have to push out and then rotate down. This is more Glockish. There's tabs on both sides. You just pull these tabs down, you can separate the upper from the lower. Mag releases look very similar. We have those ambi controls over here, and so you can see just the basic external differences. The profile is quite a bit different on the new handgun, mostly right in here. So, very interesting changes. Let's take the two guns apart and take a look at them on the inside, because that's going to be even more telling to the changes that Daniel Defense made. So the original H9, without a red dot sight on it, because it doesn't have a cut, tips the scales at just over 2 pounds. The new Daniel Defense handgun tips the scales at 1.8 pounds. So it's a little bit lighter. Now, some of that's going to be because they've trimmed the grip frame back, but one of the bigger changes would be that this is a magnet, and you'll notice that the magnet doesn't stick to the grip frame of the new pistol. That's because the grip frame on this handgun is aluminum. Now, the slide itself is metal, and therefore it'll stick to that, but it's not metal. This is all aluminum. That will lighten the gun from its original design, which is all steel. So the magnet sticks to the frame as well as the slide, right? So that's one of the ways that they lightened it, but also they trimmed the grip frame back, and they also minimized the amount of material here on the dust cover. So that's where you get the weight savings. So this thing tips the scales at 1.8 pounds, even with the red dot sight on it. This thing with no red dot sight is like 2.1 pounds. So that's a pretty significant change in the handgun. So taking the original apart is a little bit difficult. First, you want to make sure the weapon's empty. The magazine has been removed. There's nothing in the chamber. You have to push, and I found that I have to use a tool to really push across on this pin. Then you can slightly draw the slide to the rear, rotate this down. Otherwise, you'll sit in that recess flush. And then once you do that, the slide, after you got to let the striker go, the slide will move forward and off the frame. But when it does that, you'll notice that the recoil spring and guide rod stays attached inside the receiver. And then here is your barrel and slide. All right. Taking the new gun apart, I'll make sure it's emptied, no magazine inserted, chamber is clear. Now, just like a Glock, I can point the gun in a safe direction, drop the striker, pull the slide slightly rearward, pull down on these tabs, and then push the slide off the frame. And now you'll notice we have a more conventional configuration with the recoil spring. It still sets down a little bit low, has a little perch right here that it sets on. So it still sets a little bit lower than what your conventional recoil spring might set. You'll notice it's not like down setting into the barrel itself like on many other handguns. It's a little bit up. So they've tried to maintain that slightly lower recoil spring and guide rod position, but you can see here it's considerably different. You can see that especially in the front of the slide. If you take a look at the front of the slide on this one, you can see how much they've moved it upwards. So then taking this apart from there, you just push forward on the recoil spring and guide rod. You have that little tab right there. And then your barrel will come out. Now, taking a look at the cuts on the barrel, you're going to see there's a big difference between the original and the new. The new looks pretty darn conventional, Browning type action, tilting lock, but wildly different, which then means that how the frames are going to work are considerably different. Now, there might be some similarities back here, the striker release area and the disconnector, but moving forward, you can see there's considerable differences in the two guns. You'll also notice there's a lot more material in the original lower than there is on the new lower. So again, guys, the reason I'm doing this is to illustrate just how much Daniel Defense really changed the basic design of the gun. They improved it. They made it more simple. I think they made it more reliable. It probably is going to have fewer parts breakage, if any parts breakage, where the original was having some troubles. They really studied, based upon what they told me, they really studied the original design and looked at how they could improve it so that when they brought the gun to market, it would be a solid option for concealed carry. When you pick up your new H9, it's going to come in a box like this. Inside the box, you're going to find the owner's manual. Here's that QR code I was telling you about, so you could order the mounting plate that you would like. The mounting plates are all metal. They're not polymer. And so you pick the one that you would like to use with your new handgun. Handgun comes in this foam cut case, and it is already pre-cut, so when you do put a red dot sight on it, there's plenty of room in there if you want to use a mailbox style P2 Acro or the SRO that I have on there. You can see that it'll fit nicely, and you can easily grab your pistol out. Comes with 3 magazines, one in the gun, 2 others in the box, a lock. This is just a flag safety that came in the chamber. So overall, it's a nice presentation and a decent case for the money. The case can be locked, but it is not TSA/airline approved. It's too flimsy for that, but for a range box, it'll work just fine. Also, holsters are available. This is a holster that I picked up. This comes from TXC. It's a Texas-based holster company. This is their holster. This is the spare magazine pouch. And fits the gun quite nicely. So there are holster options out there already for it. Because Daniel Defense is making the gun, chances are other companies are going to want to rise up and make holsters for the pistol as well. So if you do pick one of these up, know that you're probably going to be able to get a holster for it right out of the gate. Now, when we were shooting the handgun, we've tried it with Federal, we tried it with Remington, we tried it with Bellum ammunition. We were just running different types of ammunition through it. We experienced one hiccup, and that was with this Bellum ammunition, 9mm. And this stuff, we've had it cause Glocks to malfunction. We've had it cause all sorts of different firearms to malfunction, only because it's really kind of pud-loaded 9mm. When we're shooting it, the empty cases are just barely falling out of the ejection port. And yeah, it's just not warm stuff. When we were firing Federal ammunition. I want to thank our friends over at Federal for supplying the ammunition to the channel free of charge. The 115 grain and 124 grain stuff would run just fine in the handgun. So with all that being said, the handgun retails, I believe, for right around $1,200, $1,299. So they're not inexpensive. They're going to cost about twice as much as just a standard run-of-the-mill concealed carry firearm like a Glock 19 or something along those lines. So there is an additional cost to the gun, and people are going to say, well, it's just too expensive and whatnot. Just keep in mind that there are people out there that have the extra income that do want to have a nicer handgun that isn't a Glock, that isn't a SIG, that isn't a Beretta, the more conventional names. They want something a little bit different, and that's okay. You can have nice things, and you don't have to be embarrassed about paying a little extra for them. So yes, the gun's a little bit expensive. It's all metal. Very nice trigger on it. The trigger pull we measured right around in the high 5s on the trigger pull, but it's a nice crisp trigger pull as we demonstrated earlier. Has a nice reset to it, all that stuff. So the $1,200, do I think it's worth the amount of money that's spent on it? Yes, I do. I do think it's a $1,200 handgun in terms of the quality. It is Daniel Defense after all. A lot of money was spent in redesigning the handgun. So you're not going to get it for $500. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about the firearms market. They think all new guns should be $500 and that's it. The reality is it costs a lot more than that to develop the things and bring them into production. So you have to get that cost down over time through production and mini units. So overall, what do I think of the handgun? Ergonomics, spot on for me. Jason has that one issue with his meaty hands, but it doesn't keep him from shooting the gun comfortably. It wasn't like cutting him, making him bleed or anything. It was just something that he noticed that he just didn't like about the ergonomics. For me, even a nice deep set in my hand, the gun just shoots so smooth. It is just a buttery smooth handgun in terms of the recoil. The pointability and everything, the grip angle is very familiar to me. I grew up shooting 1911s, so it's going to have that very familiar grip angle to it. I think they've made exceptionally good choices in terms of redesigning the handgun. I love the larger trigger guard. Again, guys, I'm a stickler for that. I live in a cold climate. Being able to get a gloved finger into the trigger guard is important to me. I like that they've shortened the dust cover. I like that they've used aluminum versus steel, lightened the handgun up a little bit, and then gave us red dot sight capabilities. And I also like the fact that they shortened the grip. Again, my large hands fit this gun just fine. There's no need to have it 1/4 of an inch longer. So overall, ergonomic spot on, trigger outstanding, a little bit expensive for some folks, I get that, but the quality, the shootability, everything about it is just simply top notch. I would expect nothing less from Daniel Defense. So for their first handgun entry into the market, I must commend Daniel Defense for picking a solid contender and then redesigning it, making it even better than the original. If you guys have any questions, you can ask those questions down below. I try to stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer any questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family, link in the video description below. Right here on YouTube, you have the support and thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons and you can help support us on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Last but not least, please swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 16 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.